The time has come to bid farewell to the Chapel of Lights, a place like many others, steeped in mystery and shadow, yet it has left an indelible mark upon my soul. As the crew prepares a battery for departure, I cannot shake the uneasy feeling that has settled over me like a shroud, a lingering sense of foreboding that clings to the air like the mist that shrouds the isle. Though the meal shared with the island's denizens was a feast for the senses, a symphony of flavors that danced upon the tongue, it did little to dispel the lingering sense of unease that was following us, that clung to us. Even now, as we make ready to set sail once more, the crew's anticipation is palpable, their eagerness to leave this cursed isle evident in the way they move with a renewed sense of purpose. The promise of adventure and discovery beckons us further. The siren's call that cannot be ignored. Mount Palmerston is still out there somewhere, and so too are the horrors. All this morn, something was out there in the dark, dancing around us, an island that seemingly moved. Yet, as the last of the preparations was made, the Z was silent once again. And so, with the memory of the chapel burning brightly in our minds, and the promise of the undersea stretching out before us, we cast off the moorings and set course for the open sea. We were not set to travel far, as the ship's bat screeched to the northeast. Yet another isle discovered. Searching over charts and old logs, I recognized the location as Avid Horizon. Two vast winged shapes guard a gate of something like resin, smooth but uneven. It is deep Gant, the color that remains when all other colors have been eaten. Ice crusts over the cracks between its valves. Approach and your breath freezes, falls, tinkling in shards from the air. It would be an utterly foolish thing to touch. A merciless wind blows from everywhere to everywhere. It passes without effort through my breechcoat, my flesh, my lungs. The dock ahead of us lies empty. The crew shivered and seemed uneasy to go ashore. A captain has a duty, and so I would set out to gather intelligence, such as there is to gather out here where nothing moves. The stillness itself is of interest to the Admiralty. It is not impossible someone foolish may attempt to open the gate. It is not inconceivable that it might open from the other side. And what then? I would report this fine port report back to the Admiralty upon our return. As I stood on the still and silent dock, a story came to mind. The ice by the gate's edge. There was whisper about a hunting quest and a final revenge. This is what those rumors meant. A hunter frozen in the ice, hands contorted to claws, mouth agape. With her left hand, she had plucked her own eye from the socket. It lay very close to the surface of the ice. If the stories are true, there's a dark virtue in that eye. I knew then that I must take it, but perhaps keep it in a jar. It is said that if one was to eat the flesh of the deep lurkers, your eyes would change. Thankfully, my stomach is satisfied for now. I let out a sharp whistle, calling for a number of the crew to join me in exploring the shoreline. And upon that bleak beach, we found something rather interesting. An abandoned expedition. A ragged tent flaps in the freezing wind. Ice-encrusted bones lay tumbled at the flat. Someone came here to be forgotten. We gathered up what supplies we could from the camp, acquiring an outlandish artifact for the university, an empty Millicatch box capable of capturing sunlight itself, and an eyeless skull. Thick plates of bone had developed over the orbits as if to hide or protect them. They are smooth and cold to the touch. Irigo light glimmers in the line of that jaw. And as I waited for the supplies to be loaded upon the battery, I looked into the stars. Stars that float in the mirrored night of the waves. I watched them for a time, except these were real stars. They burn above the roof underneath, beyond the earth, in the spaces of heaven. Even so far away, even now, their eyes are on me. But here, in the night, under the world, I am safe. I return to my senses, gasping, my hands cold, numb. I have no idea just how long I was watching those stars, but the crew eagerly await my return. It's time to leave the horizon. We would turn our attention southwards. There was still much undiscovered to the south and the east of us. The mountain was out there somewhere. I knew it. The waters were dark and calm. We were undisturbed, and as I stood on the bow, I could smell it. Brimstone on the wind. We were entering Palmerston's reach. The Zebat let out an almighty screech to the east. The glow of the mighty volcano was now in sight. The Mount and Port Palmerston. Finally, our destination was found. As we neared the port, a row of watchful Zebats perched on the ship's railing, their heads swiveling in unison as I crossed the deck. I took it a good sign, I hoped. Finally, we were here. Brimstone. Always Brimstone. Sullen lights glow green at the jetty's edge. Behind the port buildings, the island is knee-deep in ash. There are ruins here and there of houses destroyed by fire. Far above, the mountain's top flickers red, just for an instant. First of all came the port report. I would talk to the port folk about the Brimstone Convention. There was a revolution in hell, and the aristocracy of devils fled here. They plot in exile. They don't do us any harm. They stay up there, we stay down here. If hell's fighting itself, it's good for all of us, isn't it? A worthwhile report. Next came our delivery of smuggled souls. A hooded figure with a lantern awaited me at the far end of the quay. There was a hurried exchange. I gave the hooded shape a sign of recognition. It hissed the reply that I expected, and I handed over the crate and received a chitty marked with thief sign. If all went well, I would receive the promised remuneration back in London. And finally, that unstamped crate of brilliant souls was out of our possession. And now for official duty. The Admiralty had a contact on the Isle, and I had a rendezvous in the ruined granary up on the headland where the last generation of farmers died in the volcano's flames. Hello, I have something for you. A cowled and buzzing shape clasped my elbow and whispered in my ear. Its breath is lava and old brass, and a queasy vibration shudders through where its gloved appendage has taken hold. I have what I came for, yet after our exchange my vision was blurred and I felt rather sickly. Perhaps I am unwell. Seen as it had taken us so long to find the Isle, it only seemed right that we should explore it as a crew. Tangles of thorned shrub climbed the rocky slopes of the volcano ahead of us. It was here that we stumbled upon a Blemin colony. At the heart of a salty little bog, we came upon a pulsing mound of Blemigans. They are a rich, dark purple, like viscera, perhaps, or blackberries. They chitter as they swarm. The sound is like pebbles on a beach. I knew we must remain careful. A single Blemin is a nuisance. 100 are a calamity. We had little choice in the matter. I shielded the eyes of our young Blemin as the crew did what was necessary to survive. Armed sailors settled behind a rise on the ground at the bog's edge. On my signal, they opened fire into the purple mass. Dozens of Blemigans fall, but hundreds remain. They seethe across the bog, leaping across black gaps of standing water, moors agape. But I directed the crew's fire with calm and precision, and only a few reach our line. The crew methodically smashes them with rifle stocks and advance with caution towards the bog. The Blemigans, which remain to defend the mound, are no match for our weaponry. We take the mound without a single fatality, and they die, tittering curses. Of course, we are now in possession of a mound of mud, and there is nothing of value. Although the Blemigans apparently collected little clay tablets marked with indecipherable chicken scratchings. The quartermaster, however, points out that the Blemigan bodies can be rendered into a purple dye, which would fetch a good price almost anywhere. The danger of these creatures made me somewhat second-guess our small little friend. Alas, safely curled up in my pocket, I spared the Gallivanter the horrors of the sea. Whilst returning to the port, the crew happened upon the ruins of those that came before. Perhaps the villagers left behind something of value, something we could pick over, something that we might find. And we were fortunate, rather so. In a dry well choked with ash behind a shattered farmhouse, we found 2 casks of Z soup, emergency supplies, or hidden treasure. No one will ever return for them. Back at the port, I approached Melbourge excavations, diggery, luthery, and scullery, also Z-zoop, something that we were set to acquire for the merchant. 7 skins of the zoop. We already had 2 in our possession, so an extra 5 did not set us back so far. From our current position, I now plan to travel far to the southwest, down to the salt lions, and then finally back to London. I knew not what we might discover on our way, as I would seek to uncover all that we could. Every trip out here on the Z was a new opportunity to discover, to uncover, to unravel, and to seek. As the Bathory glides across the glassy surface of the undersea, we celebrate. Today is January 1st, 1888. No landlubber could notice the change, yet I could feel the air prickle on my skin. As we devoured supplies, I noticed some sort of beetle had unveiled my morsel of ship's biscuit. Our journey, as of yet, had taken us further to the south, and now slightly to the east, further than I would like from London. Yet our bat had caught sight of something, a small set of isles, the Shepherd Isles to be exact, lichen and standing stones. As the Bathory slipped into its mooring, I was greeted by a bearded watchman. Of course, the bearded watchman told me there are no actual shepherds on the Shepherd Isles. Sheep are mostly illegal here. No, indeed, it's just the name of the gentleman that found the isles. Greybeards, sitting in the village square, nod solemnly. No sheep, one says. Plenty of tales. Ask us anything. Before anything else, a report would have to be compiled. Oh, yes, yes. There's been going-ons in the bleak light. Oh, the false stars, surface rolling like a porridge pot. Up with a roar of steam and flashing fire. 3 widows swimming, tentacles. And then we saw His Highness. There is rather a lot of material to cover. As I wandered, the standing stones caught my eye again. It seemed the bearded villagers are happy to talk about the local sites. You heard of the Pillared Sea, where Arim lies. Wise man from Arim came here. 80 years ago. He planted 3 pillars. They were as big as a finger when I was young. Now you see them. In my son's time, they'll be big as dock cranes. They continued for a time, and I acquired yet another memory of a distant shore. Then all that was left was to ready ourselves to leave. I bought yet 1 more unit of fuel, ensuring we had enough to return to London safely. The Bathory slipped her moorings. The salt lions awaited us directly to the west. Yet our bat returned, screeching from the south, close to where we were. Yet another isle awaited. Checking the charts, I knew this to be Aby Rock. Here is the grim lair of the Sisterhood. The rock is a black spit of an island, far from anywhere anyone would want to go. And that's how the Sisterhood likes it. Here stands their fortress convent. There are bear traps that look friendly in this place. I quickly sought to compile a report. It was unlikely to be eventful. Nothing is happening. The sisters watch us. We feel their eyes. The sea crashes on the rocks. withdraws. The fortress stands stolid. It's the last year of a century. The greatest peril I risk here is a certain purpleness of prose. I had no recent news to share with the sisterhood, yet I thought I would try my luck. Knocking at the iron-studded gates, and nothing. Far away, a great bell tolls, and a drizzle begins to fall. I sneeze, returning to the battery. I knew now that we would need to be cautious with our usage of fuel. London was still far to the west, and the bricks acquired from the salt lines would weigh us down significantly. For now, our lights would remain extinguished. Before long, we found ourselves at the Zeal Port. After a quick port report, I decided to visit the unmakers. Muscular pick-wielders rest on camp stools, watching as I approach, passing hip flasks around. An unctuous overseer beckoned me to sit. We get funding from the bazaar, it's true, but Station 4, I wouldn't call us Station 4. It's a little grandiose. The stones are stuffed with secrets, but most of them are used as garden statuary or occult ballast. Most of them. Some go down to the places under the bazaar. More tea cakes? It was a nice respite, and yet again, I had a fragment of the larger picture of the happenings of the Z. After exchanging 200 echoes, we'd acquired our 20 Sphinxstone. Leaving the port, we would continue back to London in darkness, burning what little fuel we had remaining, following those great distant lights. Home was close once again. Warmer winds found us gladly. The lights of London welcome us home. I breathe a sigh of relief as soon as the gangplank touches the quayside. The terrors of the deep sea lighten. I walk taller, smile more readily. But what dreams may cling? Nightmares may yet linger. It would seem I was not the only one experiencing strange dreams. While raising one of the sleeping crew from a slumber, I heard him crying out softly in his sleep, unaware that we were home yet. I sought to inquire what they saw. Eyes and a face, the whole neath lit up like a snuffer mask. There's something in the roof, Captain. It is the roof. It's watching us. Eyes and a face. Eyes and a face. Yes, I said softly, laying my hand on the sailor's burning forehead. There are storms in the roof. We won't join them yet. The man's words set the rest of the crew to a more fearful disposition. This would have to be resolved before we returned to sea. Leaving the battery, I first made my way to the university, where it would seem the scholar had something for me. You have been so very helpful. I want to give you something for your next voyage. I bottled it myself. It smells chemical, salty. Once it might have been eel flesh, but the scholar assured me that it has vital and nutritional virtues. We would save it for an emergency, perhaps. I, too, had gifts for the scholar. First, a number of memories of distant shores, and that outlandish artifact we acquired further to the north. And finally, an extraordinary implication. After all the transactions, we were left with 700 echoes. Rather fortunate, I might say. Next came the delivery of the Sphinxstone. After signing the papers, 500 echoes were handed over. A sizable profit. Then to the survey office, with a number of reports to turn in. Each would net us fuel and echoes, some more than others. I decided to submit the report from the Shepherd Isles as unsubstantiated hearsay, a safer option. Then came the strategic information from Mount Palmerston. Passing it on, we received 150 echoes for our trouble. The next port of interest the Admiralty had its eyes set on was Khan's Heart, somewhere a good way east of London, further than we had traveled as of yet. Leaving the office of the Admiralty, I sought out the Venturer with 7 sealed skins of Zeal Port. It's a specialist taste, but Where I'm going, there are specialist customers. One more thing. The merchant spoke as 1,000 echoes were handed over. Now seeking something right, something romantic and approved, and something romantic and smuggled. 7 Scintillac from Port Cecil, or 7 approved romantic literatures, supposedly from the Carnate to the east. It seemed the Carnate would be our next port of call. Shortly after leaving the merchant, I happened upon the blind bruiser. What a propitious and encouraging occasion this is to meet again, here in this place which has been so very fortunate for both of us. Allow me to shake you warmly by the hand, since you've demonstrated your unswerving commitment to fair dealing and honest conveyance. Very good. My patron will toast you. I decided it was best to accept payment for our troubles. Here's your compensation. A little fuel and a few barrels of biscuits, what a certain other captain has widely surrendered for the common good. I will take the good word to my patron, and if I am a man of my word, we will see each other again. Unless a whale eats you, of course, which case I hope you will not think poorly of me for wishing that we will not. 200 echoes, 5 fuel, and 2 supplies. A significant amount. Oh, and before you leave, let us both drink deeply from this well, by which I mean my patron as a task for you. Take a little payment across the ocean and bring back a little package. Of course, if you return to London without the little package, I'll probably have something sharp to say about it. It was a threat I was certain the bruiser would carry out. Yet, this arrangement had worked well for the both of us so far. Here's the money, don't lose it. Now, bring the package back here, and it is my hearty recommendation that you avoid the ungentle attentions of the excise, on account of if you return without the package, it is of no interest to my patron whether you've lost it or had it taken from you. Good luck. Good luck. The bruiser left, leaving only a sentence hanging in the air. Polythreme and the sea of voices. That is where we were set to travel. Before returning to my lodgings, it was time for myself and the crew to let loose. A marvelous night out, sea shanties, fine food, and the warmth of a pub fire. Even news to share with the sisterhood or the sisters at Hunter's Keep. That eve, I sought out my likely lass. I didn't come down to the docks just to see her. Of course, I had business here. But I must confess, she crossed my mind more than once. It was only a few hours we spent together. Shared warmth, new memories. It is harder to say goodbye this time. Before the evening was through, I had another seeking my attention. A tireless mechanic, no less. Afternoon. Ready to offer my services. I'm an engineer, finest you'll ever hire. Treat engines like my own children. Not that I have any children, too busy, usually busy. I welcomed the tireless mechanic aboard the Bathory. Spot rust. Soon see to that. You there, help with the spot rust. I was uncertain if the mechanic ever truly slept. His eyes were dark-circled, but his hands steady. I thought it prudent to get to know the man a little more. I invited him to dine. His tastes are Spartan. He eats little, drinks only water, barely sleeps at all. So a simple table was all that was needed. Thanks for the meal and for the company. No wine, it makes me sleepy. Oh yes, I can sleep too easily. See, that's the problem. He hesitated. There's a draught I take nightly to substitute for sleep. It works well enough and it keeps me sane and upright, but I wish I could just enjoy one night's sleep. If you could maybe help me. We need a clayman from Polythreme. We'll need a mirror catch box, and we'll need to go to Hunter's Keep. I'll explain when we get there. No, I'm serious. I would owe you a great deal. Perhaps it was fate or pure chance, but we had already stumbled upon an empty mirror catch box far to the north. Now, all we required was a clayman, and from Polythreme, no less. The threads of fate were weaving. Nearly every officer position had been covered now. All that we were lacking was a cook, we would have to keep seeking elsewhere. As I returned to my lodging that evening, I had a rather peculiar visit. It was midnight, and a presence dominated my lodgings. Its fur-trimmed robe is the red of blood on snow. Over my chair hangs a familiar brown sack, bulging with offerings. Londoners give generously to the crimson beast of winter, anything to be rid of it. The figure stares into the fireplace, smelling of soft musk and harsh ammonia. I require a sturdy vessel and a captain. Yours comes recommended. You will suffice. Mr. Sachs, take your leave. I spoke the words as confidently as I could, hoping the creature would leave us be. Its displeasure is a shiver in my bones. Next Christmas, it would be wise to be as far away from London as possible. Polythreme is said to be at its least terrible that time of year. Surely, nothing bad can come from this. Finally, it was time to rest, as my mind churned as to what would come next. In the morn, the first stop was to the Wolfstack Exchange, where our bolt of spider silk was sold. Before leaving, I thought it finally time to upgrade the batteries somewhat. Leadbeater and Stainrod had an older, outdated model engine, the Illyrian, costing 500 echoes, but with 200 extra engine power, it would push the battery further and faster. At Bulletwood's House of Vision, I acquired a Withering optical for 100 echoes, glass as clear as ice and sharp as salt. The light was fixed to the bridge, and the engines replaced. We sold on the old engine, but not for much. 10 supplies and 15 fuel would serve us well. In addition, as would all of the mushroom wine we could possibly buy. 12 casks in total. The cargo hold was full, and we had more echoes yet. It was time, once again, to leave London, setting forth on a new odyssey. The beginning of our journey would be much like any other, gathering reports from Hunter's Keep before sailing forth towards Vanderbight. Yet this time, as we approached the keep, something was off. I could smell damp stone and faintly blood. I walked up towards the house, crunching across gravel, up to the door. The brass of the knocker is tarnished, the paint beginning to peel in the salt sea air. No one answers, but the door is unlocked. Words in darkness. The hall before me is dark, the parlor too. There are signs of disturbance here and there. A smashed cup, an overturned piano stool, scratches on the walls. I bend to pick up a page of paper and hold it to the light. It is an unfinished poem. I thought the handwriting might be that of Thebes, the absent moon, the gnawing hunger in my heart, the well, the sea, a great many crossings out. There are sounds from downstairs, from the kitchen. I pushed open the door cautiously. Something clings to the ceiling. Something turned its yellow eyes towards me and hissed. The yellow-eyed maid clings to the ceiling like a lizard, fierce and wiry in her ragged uniform. She hisses furiously. When I advanced a step, she scurried away to the far end of the room. Still on the ceiling, weeping, I reached for a net. She was dangerous, and somehow I knew I did not have much time. It's like trying to get a jaguar out of a tree. 3 of the crew are bitten badly, but at last we restrain her. She lay on the side of the table, glaring and growling. What now? I tried to question her. Those poor sailors, she spits. I realized that in all the time I'd spent at Hunter's Keep, she'd never spoken. Those poor sailors. I didn't come here for this. Down them to the well. With a serpentine wriggle, she's free. With a serpentine wriggle, she's free of the net. She returned to the ceiling in one inhuman leap. There was little chance of us coaxing her down, but I knew I must try. Whoever and whatever she is suffering. Down she comes. I tried to question yet again. Those poor sailors, damn them, to the well. She finishes the meat, then she returns to the ceiling once again in that inhuman bound. I left the maid for a time. The house seems empty. All is still. Why is it then that I had the sense that there's not much time remaining? I would search to find whatever I could. A distant song. I cocked my head and listened. Someone is singing. A woman's voice.
Soft over the fountain, hearing falls the southern moon.
The sound led me up the winding stairs to the turret at the back of the house. I tried the door at the top. The sound ceased. It was Phoebe's voice. I called out to her. What's happened? We wanted their stories, she explains reasonably. We only wanted their stories in the beginning. We get so starved for stories out here. But then Lucy. She broke down, sobbing. Want us to break the door down? My bosun whispered. While I was considering the answer, one of the crew swore and pointed. Smoke was leaking out from beneath the door. I deserve an ending, Phoebe called out. When I pressed my hand to the door, I could feel the heat on my palms. The house is aflame. The fire begins in Phoebe's turret room, but it spreads quickly. Sailors tumble, choking from the door as smoke billows out. The yellow-eyed maid leaps from the window and streaks across the lawn on all fours. There was no time to think. I had to act. Phoebe. Her mind may be lost to grief and madness, but at least, perhaps, I can save her flesh from the flames. A bucket chain passes up water from the sea, enough to slow the flames a fraction, and to soak the cloths I wrapped myself in. I dashed through the flames, my skin crisping, eyebrows sizzling, my hair growing back patchy after. Phoebe was slumped against the wall. I seized her, slinging her over a shoulder and dashed out. The spine of the house broke with a roar as the roof fell in. Sparks flew up towards the false stars so far above. The death of the house takes hours, but it is total. Only a cindered shell remains. Phoebe weeps when she wakes. Racking sobs shake her body. You should have left me, is all that she would say for the longest time. Her face is horribly burnt. She goes bandaged after, like the half-dead of the tomb colonies. Perhaps she's half-dead herself. Can be difficult to tell underneath. The house on Hunter's Keep is now nothing more than a blackened shell, and the scarred sister, Phoebe, now calls the Battery home. After the last of the flames had consumed all they could, I found her on the deck, listening to the wind, watching for the storm. I invited her inside to speak about what had happened. It was clear that Phoebe wished to leave that life behind, and so it would be. For now, she was the scarred sister, and Hunter's Keep would remain in the past. No one will reclaim Hunter's Keep, despite its proximity to London. The place has an eerie reputation. It is still difficult to see why, though. The place is peaceful as a folly in a park. The air is still, and far across the water, the lights of London glow. I can see why the sisters remained here for so long. Like many places in the undersea, secrets linger. The crew recovered what they could, but now this blackened shell, a place that once brought me comfort, now leaves a strange sinking feeling at the bottom of my stomach. I hope that our scarred sister can find some form of peace out on the sea. If it is storms she seeks, we will find them before long. Far to the east we shall go.